Welcome to the Survivor to Thriver show with your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Are you a survivor of abuse or other trauma? Are you tired of feeling stuck, silent, and stressed all the time? This is the podcast people from all over the world join in to learn exactly how to stop suffering and start living with more inner peace and joy. Are you ready to eliminate suffering from your life and transform from a survivor to thriver? Then congratulations, you are in the right place. Let's get started. Hey, welcome back to the Survivor to Thriver show. Today we are going to once again reflect on the idea or the teaching about attachment, where attachment says, I will give all the world's happiness to my love. Attachment says, I will give all the world's happiness to my love. But today we are going to reflect on it in the context of my life experience. I'm going to frame it for you in the context of my own survivor to thriver journey. So as before, I have to go back to when I was 8 years old and I survived child sexual abuse and the impact that going through that experience had on me. In the aftermath of surviving that abuse, I've shared with you in earlier episodes, one of the biggest impacts it had on me was that I lost my sense of trust in my own self and in others. I could no longer trust myself to accurately judge when other people wanted to hurt me or not. And I could no longer trust myself to stand up for myself and protect myself when someone was trying to hurt me because I had failed to do so in the context of when I was being subjected to the sexual abuse. And I lost trust in others. Right? I could not trust anymore even the people who were closest to me and that a part of me believed and knew loved me and only wanted the best for me. A part of me became doubtful of being able to trust even those people in my life, because the person who abused me was someone that I had loved and trusted, somebody who was a member of my family. And so because of all this, I developed a great fear of being hurt again. And to protect myself in reaction to that fear, my protector self, right, took really strong action. It became, this fear became the directive force in my life. And it started to direct my behavior and my decisions, and was the perspective from which I started making my judgments and evaluations. And so my protector self responding to the strong fear of being hurt again, put up strong defensive walls and isolated me. Because if I'm alone, if no one can reach me behind my walls, then no one can hurt me. So it was a very well-intentioned move on the part of my protector self, but it had that unfortunate side effect of isolating me, right? The isolation was this, in itself a double-edged sword. On the one hand, to some extent, it was successful in protecting me, but on the other hand, hey, one of our universal needs, core human needs, is to love and be loved, to care and be cared for. And if I'm isolated, then I cannot meet that need. It's like I have a need for safety, but I also have a need to love and be loved, right? And so these two core essential needs came into apparent conflict. And my protector self at that time was stronger, and it was being driven by the fear, and so it outweighed and suppressed and ignored the need to love and be loved, and for and just focused on keeping us safe. But here's the problem, the other problem with the strategy that my protector self employed to keep me safe. So it's like, okay, now I'm isolated, I'm on my own, but I'm still alive. I still have to live my life. And as I'm living my life, I have to face challenges. I mean, the biggest challenge of all that was really consuming my life was the chaos and the sense of pain and suffering that I was going through and work trying to deal with and cope with in the aftermath of the abuse. And my need for inner peace, my need for healing. But at a very objective level, if you look at the situation, anyone could see or would know that objectively, I did not have the capacity to deal with that challenge on my own. I just didn't. I didn't have enough knowledge. I didn't have enough information, let alone anything else, right? I mean, I didn't even understand what had I didn't even fully understand what had happened to me. I didn't even have the words to say, oh, what happened to me was child sexual abuse, right? So in a scenario like that, how was I supposed to be able to help myself heal and achieve inner peace all by myself? It wasn't going to happen. It couldn't happen. But I could not see that at that point in time. This need for safety, this fear-driven strategy that my protector self employed sort of clouded all of that and pushed aside all of these realities, just ignored them, right? Because it didn't have an answer now to how to respond, to how to deal with this fact. Because yes, on the one hand, like a part of me knew that I needed help and support, but on the other hand, the fear of reaching out and asking for help and then potentially being hurt again was so great that I was in no place to do the wise thing in the situation, which was take courageous action, to commit to taking courageous action and acting despite my fear. I just wasn't in a state to be able to do that because the fear was just too strong. So if I cannot take courageous action and act in spite of my fear to ask for help, I still have to deal with this challenge of healing myself and finding inner peace. How am I going to do it all by myself when I actually, in fact, cannot do it all by myself? But here's the thing. If I actually allow myself to believe that I cannot do it all by myself, then there's no hope. Then where is the hope of my being able to achieve inner peace and healing? And if I have no hope for being able to achieve inner peace and healing, then how am I supposed to survive? How am I supposed to continue to live? I would have become suicidal. So thank God I did not allow myself to believe that I couldn't do it on my own in that moment. Thank God I didn't. Because otherwise I would have become suicidal. So here I am, not able to take courageous action and ask for help. Cannot allow myself to believe that I cannot do it on my own, because that means loss of all hope of achieving inner peace and healing, without which I cannot live. What's the only option left? Well, the only option that my projector self could figure out at that time, and it did, was to convince myself that I could manage on my own. That I was self-sufficient. And that, for me, was the root cause that gave birth to arrogance in my mind and in my life. So yes, absolutely. I became arrogant, and my arrogance gave birth to a lot of attachments. What did those attachments look like? Well, they took many different shapes or forms, but essentially, I became attached to specific ways of doing things and specific ways of being. I became very attached to the idea of my being self-sufficient. Like, I remember struggling for hours at a time on my own to solve even little problems. Like when I was in school and I'd get stuck on some homework problem, I had so many options to that I could have utilized to get some help. I could have asked my older brother, I could have asked my teachers, reached out to my peers. There were tutors available at our school. But I went to no one for help because I just had to, believe and continue to reinforce his belief in my own ability to just solve all my own problems, to be self-sufficient and not have to need help. And I just convinced myself that this was actually a good thing, that I did this, that I solved all my problems by myself or did the best I could to solve them on my own, that I didn't ask for help. I thought to myself, this shows I'm strong. This shows that, how capable I am. And the thing was that a lot of times if I just put in more time, if I put in more effort, I did figure out a lot of things, and I was like, see, I didn't need to go ask anyone else. I can do this. I can do this. I was like really heavily invested in this attitude, I had a very strong attachment around it. And another way that it really showed up in the context of how I interacted with other people, especially my peers, was like I hated to participate in games, especially competitive games, because I couldn't bear to lose. I just hated losing. And so if I thought there was any possibility of my losing a game, I just wouldn't play it. And so even when, my cousins or my peers in school would invite me, I'd be like, no. And so then what happened is by default, I ended up having to sit by myself in some corner while everyone else went and engaged in those games and so forth. So, it has like all these, so yes, arrogance gave birth to attachments. The attachments led to even greater isolation in my life, disconnected me from the people around me. And the thing was that when we don't ask for help and support, when we run into challenges and problems, and we try to solve them all by ourselves, oftentimes even if we can solve them on our own eventually, it just takes so much more time and energy than if we ask for help. So we make the whole process of solving those problems a lot more challenging for us. It feels more difficult. It feels more overwhelming. It's definitely a lot more time consuming. Right? So we literally make life more difficult for ourselves. I made life more difficult for myself because of my arrogance, because of my attachments to my own attitudes and beliefs and ways of doing things. So just think about that, where you might have some attachments in your life, and how they may be separating you, compromising the quality of your relationships, and introducing unnecessary hardships in your life. Especially the attachments, in the context of attachments that are born of arrogance, of this illusion that we are self-sufficient. So think about that, and I will pick up on this again tomorrow, because there's actually some other things I really need to highlight with the challenges that can be caused in our lives because of this, if we believe in this idea of I'm self-sufficient, if we have this kind of arrogant attitude. So I'll talk more about that in next episode, and we'll start to shift towards solutions and so forth. In the meanwhile, I want to remind you, as usual, to please show me some love by going on iTunes and leaving the show a 5-star rating. And until we connect tomorrow, I wish you lots of peace and joy.